The planet Zetheria glowed under the pale light of its twin suns. Its skies shimmered with gold and violet, and the air carried the faint hum of alien technology. The city of Lyrathis, home to the royal family, sprawled across cliffs of glittering crystal. Today, the city buzzed, not with merchants or scholars, but with preparations for a wedding unlike any Zetheria had seen before. Princess Liara, the only daughter of the ruling council, walked through the palace gardens with grace, though her heart was heavy. She was dressed in a ceremonial gown of shimmering silver silk that caught the sunlight in every fold. Alien guards lined the marble walkways, their weapons polished, their eyes alert, but Liara hardly noticed them. Her thoughts were on the human she was about to wed, Ethan. The name had traveled across star systems, whispered in anxious tones by council members. He was the human ambassador sent from Earth to cement the alliance between the planets. But what little was known about him unsettled the aliens. Humans, they believed, were fragile, emotional, and unpredictable. Liara had only met him twice before this day. Both times, he had said almost nothing. His eyes, calm and observant, seemed to miss nothing, yet he never spoke unless necessary. That silence irritated her. How could someone so quiet be expected to share her life? And yet, politics left her no choice. This marriage was not about love. It was about peace, alliances, and the survival of ZYTH Aria. As she reached the palace's central hall, the doors swung open to reveal Ethan standing there. He was taller than she expected, but his posture was relaxed. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead. His uniform of simple earth design seemed plain among the lavish decorations. He did not bow excessively, nor did he speak. He simply waited. Liara studied him, her alien instincts searching for any sign of weakness. There was none. He did not fidget. He did not glance around nervously. He just stood quietly, as if he belonged in a place far grander than any human should. The ceremony began. A mixture of Zetherian rituals and earth customs. Lyra's heart beat faster with every step toward him, though she did not know why. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps it was curiosity. Or perhaps it was the faint feeling that this quiet human might be hiding something she could not yet see. When the officiant spoke, Liara glanced at Ethan. He simply nodded, following the motions without hesitation. His silence was not disrespect. It was something else. Something deliberate. He was listening, watching, learning. The vows were exchanged, words flowing with elegance, carrying promises of unity and protection. When it came time for the final gesture, Liara expected nothing more than a simple touch, perhaps a polite bow from him. Instead, Ethan placed his hand over hers with a firmness that startled her. His eyes met hers for the first time in that hall, steady and unwavering. There was no fear, no doubt, only focus. Before the ceremony could end fully, an alarm rang through the palace. Alien guards shouted, rushing to their stations. Liara's heart sank. She had feared political unrest, but nothing could have prepared her for what was coming. From the sky above, raiders from a hostile neighboring planet descended in sleek, dark ships. They fired energy pulses at the palace walls, and explosions rocked the ground. Crystal shards flew through the air. Guards struggled to defend the gates. Liara drew her energy blade, its bright, humming light casting shadows across the hall. She had trained her whole life for combat, and yet she felt a twinge of worry. She glanced at Ethan, expecting fear or hesitation. There was none. Ethan stepped forward, and the room seemed to freeze. He reached beneath his cloak and drew a sword. It was not an alien weapon, nor was it the kind of firearm the council had provided. It was simple, a human design, steel-polished and sharp. Yet in his hands, it felt different, like it had been made for this moment. For this battle, the first raiders landed in the courtyard. They expected chaos, easy victory. They were not prepared for Ethan. In a single movement, he swung his sword. It cut through the nearest raider's energy shield as if it were paper. Lyra's jaw dropped. Alien warriors had spent years mastering energy combat. Yet this human moved with precision, speed, and strength she had never seen. He blocked attacks effortlessly and countered with strikes that sent enemies flying. Liara realized she had underestimated him. Every motion, every decision he made was deliberate. He seemed to anticipate the raiders' moves before they made them. Her pride in her combat skills remained, but she felt a new kind of respect. This human was dangerous not because he was cruel or violent, but because he was perfectly controlled. The palace guards regrouped and followed his lead. With Ethan guiding them, they turned a desperate defense into a coordinated counterattack. Liara fought beside him, yet she kept stealing glances. Every time he moved, he demonstrated skill, bravery, and clarity that no alien warrior could match. A raider tried to flank Ethan from behind, thinking the silent human would be easy to defeat. But Ethan pivoted, blocking the attack effortlessly and countering in one fluid motion. Liara saw something in the raider's expression: fear. Fear of a human. The battle seemed to stretch for hours, though it was only minutes. Finally, the last raider was defeated, retreating to their ships with a mix of terror and disbelief. The palace was battered but standing. Crystal walls glimmered with cracks, scorched marks, and smoke curling into the violet sky. Liara lowered her energy blade, her hands shaking slightly. She turned to Ethan, expecting exhaustion, but saw none. He stood quietly, sword in hand, surveying the scene with calm eyes. "You," she began, unsure what to say. "You fought like a warrior." Ethan's expression did not change. He simply nodded once, as if her words were unnecessary. The council entered the hall, their faces pale and filled with awe. "This human," one of them whispered. He is unlike any we expected." Lyra's mind raced. For months, she had thought of him as weak, fragile, a political pawn. Now, she realized he was something else entirely. Something far more formidable. She walked up to him, still holding her blade. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "Why? Why did you hide this?" Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I do not hide," he said. "I wait. I act when it matters. Words are for those who cannot show their strength." Liara stared at him. She did not fully understand his words, but she felt their weight. This human, silent and reserved, had protected not only her, but the palace and the council. He had done what no alien could, and without boast or pride. The palace began repairs quickly. Lara was escorted to her private chambers. She could not stop thinking about Ethan. Every detail, the way he moved, the way he observed, the way he acted haunted her thoughts. She had married a human she did not understand. But now she wondered if she ever truly understood humans at all. That night, as Zithria's twin moons rose over the cliffs, Liara looked out her window. The city was quiet now, but her mind raced. The silent human she had wed was no longer a mystery. He was a force she had never expected. A calm storm of skill and courage. She wondered what else he was capable of. And a small part of her, one she had not allowed herself to feel before, felt something new: respect. Perhaps even trust. Ethan, meanwhile, sat quietly in the corner of the chamber, his sword resting beside him. He said nothing, but his eyes followed every movement, noting every detail of the palace, the city, and the people. He was silent, yes, but his silence was not weakness. It was preparation, observation, strategy, and as the twin moons reflected in his dark eyes, Liara realized something important. This human, quiet and calm, had already changed her world, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The night was long, but for the first time since her engagement, Liara felt something she had never felt before: curiosity. Not about politics, not about duty, about him. The silent human she had married was no ordinary man. He was extraordinary. And in that realization, she felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring more challenges. But tonight, she could not stop thinking. The human she thought she understood was far more than he appeared. And the next time danger came, and she was certain he would be ready, Liara did not yet know the full measure of his strength. She did not know his past, his training, or the full potential hidden behind that quiet demeanor. But one thing was certain. She would never underestimate him again. As the palace settled into uneasy quiet, Liara and Ethan remained in the room, one silent, one thoughtful. In that silence, a bond began not of words, but of understanding. And it was a bond that would shape the events to come. When the galaxy would finally see what a human could do, the first part of her story with him was over. But their journey had only just begun. The sun rose over Zetheria, its twin rays spilling gold and violet across the crystalline palace. The previous night's attack was still fresh in everyone's mind. Outside, palace workers repaired damaged walls, and soldiers practiced defensive drills. The air was tense, yet hope lingered like a soft wind. Princess Liara moved through the halls with measured steps. Her mind focused on the human she had married. Ethan remained as silent as ever, but the events of the prior night had changed everything. The palace guards no longer whispered insults or doubts about him. The human they once mocked was now their hero, though his calm, quiet demeanor unsettled them as much as it inspired awe. Liara entered the training hall, a vast space lined with holographic maps and advanced combat simulators. Ethan was already there, standing beside the human sword he had wielded with such deadly precision. He was observing the holographic battlefield, his head tilted slightly as if calculating every possible move. "Ethan," Liara said, her voice firm but curious. "Teach me how you think. How do you move with such precision?" Ethan turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers. He did not smile, nor did he speak immediately. Finally he said, "You observe first. Listen second. Act only when necessary." Liara frowned. She had been trained in combat her whole life, yet his words, so simple, carried a depth she could not ignore. "That's it?" she asked. "That is enough," he replied, turning back to the holographic map. Words often fail. Action does not. Liara watched him work, analyzing the holographic attackers as if they were real. Every movement of the enemies was anticipated, every countermeasured. She began to understand why he had been so successful in defending the palace. Over the next few days, Ethan trained the guards, showing them ways to combine human unpredictability with Zitharian technology. He did not shout or demand attention. He quietly corrected their movements, demonstrated strategies, and guided them with calm authority. Slowly, the alien soldiers began to respect him not just for his skill, but for his mind. During one training session, Liara approached him with a question that had been burning in her mind. "Why did Earth send you here? Did you know the danger?" Ethan paused, considering his words carefully. "I was sent to protect the Alliance. Danger was expected. Humans do not fear what they prepare for." Liara felt a twinge of surprise. Humans, she realized, had a logic she had never fully understood. While aliens relied on strength and tradition, humans relied on calculation, adaptation, and instinct. Ethan was living proof. As the days passed, rumors began to spread through Zetheria. The other noble families whispered about the human princess had married. "He is quiet but deadly," they said. "Stronger than any of our warriors." Some were jealous, some were fearful, all were intrigued. Liara herself could not help but watch him with growing fascination. She began noticing small gestures, how he adjusted his grip on the sword, how he scanned the horizon even when no enemy was near, how he treated the palace guards with fairness and patience. There was a discipline about him that reminded her of the best Zetharian warriors, yet something about him was different, more subtle. One afternoon, a new threat emerged. Scouts reported that the raiders from the neighboring planet were returning, this time in greater numbers. Lyra's council argued for diplomacy and defensive walls, but Ethan remained calm. He studied the reports, noting patterns in the enemy fleet's movements. "They will strike here," he said quietly, pointing at the holographic map. "And here, and here," the council murmured in disbelief. "How can a human know this?" one elder asked. Liara stepped forward. "He is not just a human," she said firmly. "He is something more." When the raiders arrived, Ethan's predictions were correct. The alien defenses were ready, but it was his strategy that turned the tide. He positioned the guards in ways that combined human unpredictability with Zithrian strength. He created traps, used terrain advantage, and anticipated enemy movements. Every time a raider thought they had an opening, they met resistance. Liara fought beside him, amazed at how he moved. Even in the heat of battle, Ethan remained calm, analyzing, observing, directing. He did not shout orders. He simply acted, and the guards followed. They trusted him because he had earned their trust. When the battle ended, the palace remained secure, and the raiders were forced to retreat. The council was stunned. They had underestimated a human. They had underestimated Ethan. Liara approached him once the last of the raiders had fled. "You are incredible," she said. "Why did you not tell anyone about your skill before?" Ethan shook his head. There was no need. Words are less powerful than action. You judge a human by words, but we are measured by what we do. Liara studied him, seeing not just a warrior, but a mind that was calm, disciplined, and endlessly clever. Her respect for him deepened. Her curiosity grew. She had married a human she barely knew, and yet she was beginning to understand him in a way no one else could. The palace returned to a tense peace, but Ethan remained vigilant. He patrolled the walls, observed the skies, and trained the guards, always preparing for the next threat. Liara watched him silently, often joining him during the patrols. She began to see him not just as a protector, but as someone whose presence changed everything. One evening, while overlooking the city from a high balcony, Liara spoke again. "Ethan, you are different from any warrior I have known. Why do you remain so quiet?" Ethan looked at the twin moons reflecting off the crystal city. "I listen," he said. "I observe. Words are unnecessary when actions speak. Silence is preparation. Silence is understanding." Liara felt the truth in his words. Humans were unpredictable, not because they were weak, but because they thought differently. They saw possibilities others missed. They adapted, and Ethan embodied that in every gesture, every movement. The next days brought challenges beyond raiders. Political tensions flared as other alien worlds questioned the alliance with Earth. Some saw Ethan's success and feared what humans might do. Others admired him secretly, recognizing the skill and intelligence that lay behind his quiet demeanor. Liara found herself defending him at council meetings. "Do not judge him by his silence," she argued. "He has saved this palace, defended this city, and guided our warriors. That is worth more than any speech." Some elders nodded, though others remained skeptical. "Humans are unpredictable," one said. "How do we know this will not backfire?" Liara looked at Ethan, who remained calm, standing slightly behind her. "We judge him by what he does," she replied, "not by what we fear." As tensions grew, Ethan prepared the palace for any eventuality. He trained squads in defensive formations, taught rapid evacuation strategies, and improved communication between the city's guards. Liara watched, learning from him, realizing that his quiet strength was not just physical. It was intellectual, strategic, and moral. He acted not for glory, but for duty, and his loyalty inspired everyone around him. One night, a message arrived from Earth. More humans were coming, sent to observe and support the alliance. Liara feared political complications, but Ethan only nodded. He seemed ready for anything. The next morning, when the humans arrived, the alien council watched as Ethan greeted them not with words, but with calm authority and measured action. The humans followed his lead seamlessly, their presence bolstering Zithri's defenses without causing chaos. Even the skeptical council members could not deny his skill. Liara, standing beside him, felt a mixture of awe and admiration. She realized that the human she had married was more than a warrior. He was a teacher, a strategist, and a leader in his own right. And for the first time, she wondered if there might be more to their bond than duty. Later, in the palace gardens, Liara spoke to him quietly. "Ethan, I see now that your silence is not weakness. It is strength, and I respect that more than I can say." Ethan turned to her, his expression calm but attentive. "Respect is earned through action, not words," he said. You have seen that now. Liara nodded, a small smile forming. For the first time, she felt not just curiosity but trust. The human she had thought she barely knew had become a part of her life in ways she could not have imagined. That night, the city of Larathis slept under the twin moons, peaceful for the first time since the raiders had attacked. And in the quiet palace, Liara and Ethan stood together. Not needing words to understand the bond forming between them, the human she had wed was no longer silent to her heart. His actions had spoken, and they had changed everything. The twin moons of Zetheria hung low in the sky, casting soft blue light over the crystalline palace. Princess Liara stood on one of the highest balconies, her cloak flowing in the night breeze. She had not slept. Not since she learned the truth, the raiders were not retreating. They were gathering. Reports had come in earlier that day. An entire fleet was approaching Zetheria. Not just scouts, not just small strike groups, thousands of soldiers and warships, united under a warlord determined to conquer the royal city. The council had panicked. Some demanded evacuation. Others wanted to surrender. A few even suggested sending Ethan away, fearing that he was the reason the raiders were so persistent. But Liara stood her ground. He has saved us twice, she told them firmly. He will not abandon us now. He is not the danger. He is our shield. And now she waited. She heard footsteps behind her. Calm and steady. Without turning, she already knew it was Ethan. He stood beside her, his silent presence strangely comforting. He was dressed in his Earth uniform again, but over it he wore Zetherian armor shaped to fit his body, engraved with symbols of unity between their worlds. At his side hung his sword, the same human weapon that had stunned an entire planet. They will come soon, Liara said quietly. Yes, Ethan replied. Liara took a slow breath. Will we survive? Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked at the sky, watching the stars. His silence was not hesitation, it was calculation. Then he spoke. Yes, if we fight together, Liara nodded. And for the first time in her life, she did not question. She believed. The next morning, Zetheria prepared for war. The crystal streets were lined with soldiers. Shimmering energy shields covered the palace gates. Civilians were escorted to underground shelters. The alien council stood on high platforms giving orders, yet all eyes were not on them. They were on Ethan. The human moved through the ranks, checking defenses, adjusting positions, guiding soldiers with small gestures rather than loud commands. Wherever he walked, fear turned into focus. Doubt turned into determination. Liara watched as he gave final instructions to her generals. Do not chase, he said simply. Let them come to us. We control the ground. Why? One general asked. Because they expect you to scatter. They expect panic, Ethan replied. We will give them silence. And then, we strike. The generals nodded, though they did not fully understand. But Liara did. Ethan's greatest weapon was not his sword. It was his mind. By midday, the sky darkened, not by clouds, but by warships. Hundreds of black vessels blotted out the sun, descending in formation. The ground trembled with the sound of engines. The air crackled with energy. Liara stood on the palace wall, sword in hand, armor gleaming. Ethan stood beside her, calm as always. Alien war horns echoed across the land. The raider army landed at the base of the palace cliffs. Their soldiers, towering beings in metal suits, roared as they advanced. But Zetheria did not roar back. They stood silently waiting. The raiders hesitated, confused. Why were the aliens not charging? Why were they not panicking? Ethan whispered, now. Liara gave the signal. In an instant, hidden energy cannons opened fire from the cliffs. Beams of light shot across the battlefield, striking the front lines of the enemy. The raiders staggered. Some fell. The ground shook, yet more kept coming. Ethan leaped from the wall, landing on the battlefield with impossible precision. His sword flashed in the sunlight, cutting through metal armor like cloth. He moved fast, not wildly, not recklessly, but perfectly. Every strike was measured. Every dodge calculated. Liara could not stay back any longer. She jumped into the fray beside him for the first time. Princess Liara and Ethan fought not as strangers, not as a forced couple, but as partners. She struck with blazing energy. He countered with silent steel. She drove enemies back with strength. He dismantled them with precision. When one was surrounded, the other appeared. When one stumbled, the other stepped forward. Even the enemy warlord, a massive figure clad in obsidian armor, paused at the sight of them. He laughed, believing it was foolish for a princess and a lone human to stand before him, but his laughter died when Ethan turned to face him. No words were spoken. No challenge declared. Ethan simply raised his sword. The warlord charged with a roar, swinging a massive hammer glowing with raw power. The ground cracked under its weight. But Ethan did not move until the last moment. He sidestepped, the hammer missing him by inches, and delivered a precise strike to the warlord's leg. The giant stumbled. Liara leaped up, her energy blades slashing across his armor. Sparks flew. The warlord roared in pain, but Ethan remained silent. He advanced slowly, step by step, sword steady. The warlord raised his hammer again, frustrated. He swung wildly. Ethan ducked. Another swing. Ethan spun aside. A third. Ethan blocked. Metal clashing against metal with a ringing sound that echoed through the battlefield. Then, in one smooth motion, Ethan knocked the hammer away and pointed his sword at the warlord's chest. The battlefield went still. Even the raiders stopped fighting. The warlord stared at him, shocked. "You are only one human." Ethan did not reply. His silence was louder than any boast. Slowly, the warlord sank to one knee. For the first time in Zetharian history, a war was ended not by words, but by quiet strength. The enemy withdrew. The battlefield fell silent once more, but not with fear, with awe. Princess Liara stood beside Ethan as the Zetharian soldiers gathered around them. No one spoke. No one cheered. They simply looked upon the human who had protected their world. Finally, Liara stepped forward. She spoke loudly, her voice echoing across the field. "Today, our city stands not because of our walls, but because of one man." She turned to Ethan, a man who does not need speeches, a man who does not demand respect. He earns it. With every action, with every breath, she faced her people again. Let it be known across the stars. Humans are not weak. Humans are not reckless. Humans are not tools of politics. She placed her hand over Ethan's. Humans are partners. The soldiers bowed their heads in agreement. Some saluted. Others clenched their fists over their chests. Ethan said nothing, but his hand tightened, slightly around Lyra's, and that was enough. Days passed. The palace was repaired. The council now spoke of humans with admiration rather than suspicion. Messages came from distant planets asking about the silent human warrior. Ethan continued his quiet routines, training the guards, checking defenses, patrolling the walls. But now, wherever he walked, people greeted him with respect. Liara often joined him on his rounds. They did not speak much, but they didn't need to. One evening they stood once again on the balcony overlooking the city. The stars shimmered across the sky. Liara turned to him. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Ethan was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Earth is my home, but this is my duty." Liara smiled softly. "And your place is here." With us? Ethan looked at her. His expression did not change, but his silence felt different. Now, not distant, not uncertain, warm, steady, present. Liara stepped closer. "I once thought your silence was emptiness," she said. "Now I know it is strength." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then for the first time. Since she had met him, he smiled. It was faint, brief, but real. Liara's heart stirred. And in that quiet moment, beneath the twin moons of Zetheria, she realized something simple, yet powerful. She had not just married a human, she had found a protector, a partner, a legend. And without any grand speeches or loud declarations, everything had changed.